Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Before we even jump into today's topic, please remember to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. We really love hearing your thoughts, so definitely drop your opinions in the comments section as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate the community feedback.
Right. So today I want you to imagine a scenario. You're sitting in the stands at, say, Murrayfield or the Stade de France.
Oh, nothing beats that atmosphere.
Exactly. You're watching the Six Nations, right?
Mm.
You see the Scottish thistle or the French rooster on the jersey.
Mm.
You hear those massive national anthems echoing through the stadium. And you feel that, that unmistakable pride of a nation's homegrown talent stepping up to defend their soil.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the entire emotional foundation of international sports. We all want to believe that the 15 players on the pitch are the absolute pinnacle of that specific country's domestic pathway.
Yeah, from the grassroots clubs all the way up to the professional academies. It's a very comforting, romantic idea.
It is, yeah. But if you look a little closer at the international rosters over the last decade, well, that clean geographical line is completely shattered.
It really is. We're looking at a global rugby landscape that functions entirely differently behind the scenes. So today we are pulling apart a fascinating set of sources centered on an in-depth analysis called the Springbok Export. And this covers the decade from 2016 to 2026.
And the data in these sources is just, I mean, it's staggering.
It's wild. The mission of this deep dive is to explore a truly mind-bending statistical reality. Consider this. For 5 consecutive seasons, going all the way back to the 2019 World Cup, the South African national team, the Springboks, they've fielded a 100% homegrown roster.
Which is, in the modern era of, highly fluid international eligibility laws, that's almost an anomaly in itself.
Right. But here is the catch. While the Springbok selectors haven't needed to call up a single diaspora player, their domestic school and university system has quietly produced more than 30 senior test careers for other rival nations during that exact same window.
30? That's just...
Right. You might think you're watching Scotland or Ireland or Japan play, but behind the crests on their jerseys, you are frequently watching the output of a single, incredibly prolific South African talent factory.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the rugby world largely pretends this massive production system doesn't even exist. I mean, the traffic of players runs strictly one way.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can talk about who is scooping up these players, we really need to understand the why. Like, why does this massive surplus of talent exist in the first place? And when I was reading the sources, I thought, it's like South Africa's manufacturing sports cars at such a high volume that they keep all the Ferraris for themselves, but there are still dozens of Porsches just, rolling off the line looking for owners.
That's actually a great way to look at it, because the scale is just industrial. Look at the South African university system. Meires, which is Stellenbosch University, they have around 1,500 active players in a given season.
Wow, 1,500.
Yeah, and Tucky's, the University of Pretoria, is right behind them.
But, put that into context for the listener, because 1,500 sounds like a lot, but how does it compare?
Well, take a major European club like Toulouse.
Yeah.
They are a massive operation, right? But across their whole structure, they might only have a few hundred players.
Oh, wow.
So this South African system, which includes schools and franchises like Shimla's, Poke, and Ike's, it's so robust that the talent pool is just overflowing.
And these kids are basically doing professional level conditioning as teenagers, right?
Exactly. They have elite coaching, nutrition, and strength programs before they even hit university. So you end up with all these incredible athletes, but South Africa only has so many professional franchises.
There are just no jerseys left to hand out.
Right. And that is when the international scouts step in.
Which brings us to the biggest beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, no one has leaned on this pipeline harder than Scotland.
Oh, for sure. It's a volume game for them.
Yeah, I mean, the sources show Scotland has capped an astonishing 10 South African-born players in this window. 10, that's almost a whole starting lineup. Which, really makes me wonder, is Scotland even developing their own front row anymore? Or are they just looking at South African family trees?
Well, I mean, you have to understand the strategy behind it. This pipeline, largely flowing through Edinburgh and Glasgow Warriors, allows a smaller nation like Scotland to compete physically.
Because they just don't have the sheer numbers of massive human beings.
Exactly. The attrition rate in the tight five is brutal. Scotland uses every loophole available to get these guys in blue shirts. You've got W.P. Nel, who's kind of the decade-spanning through line here.
Right, he came in on residency. along with Pierre Schoeman.
Yeah, and then you have guys qualifying through parents, like Kyle Stein and Dylan Richardson.
And even grandparents, Alan Dell and Nathan Macbeth.
And of course, the most productive export of them all, Duhan van der Merwe. I mean, he's a lethal finisher. He toured with the 2021 and 2025 Lions. He fundamentally changed Scotland's attacking dynamic.
He really did.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we move on to how other countries are using this system, if you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. Your support is it's what keeps these deep dives going.
Definitely. And it's a fascinating topic because not everyone uses the dragnet approach like Scotland.
Right. While Scotland went for volume, other Six Nations teams used the South African system for highly targeted strategic acquisitions. Let's look at Ireland.
Yeah, Ireland is a great example of being very precise.
They only had 5 defining names on this list,
Yeah.
but they were massive names, like C.J. Stander.
Oh, Stander was a game changer. He was a former junior buck captain who realized he might be slightly undersized for the Springbok back row profile, so he heads to Munster.
And he becomes this absolute workhorse for Ireland, right?
Yeah.
51 caps.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting if we connect this to the bigger picture. These highly targeted players often fill specific, grueling physical roles like lock and back row that might be, a bit scarce in domestic European academies.
Oh, the Gene Klein story. I have to bring this up.
Yes, the ultimate irony.
It's crazy. So Gene Klein is the only Tier 1 player to play for Ireland and then use the 2022 World Rugby eligibility law change to switch back and get recapped by the Springboks.
Yeah, the 36-month stand-down rule.
Like, how must that feel for Ireland? You find this guy, you develop him for international rugby, you cap him, and then you lose him back to the factory that originally made him.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but it shows the magnetic pull of the Springbok jersey. And France and Italy are doing similar targeted strikes.
Right, France uses this pipeline sparingly, but heavily in the forwards.
Yeah, Bernard Leroux and Paul Willems, they became absolute fixtures in the French pack through top 14 residency.
And Italy, too. Bram Stein anchored their list with 50 caps, and they just added Ross Vincent, who qualified through his Sicilian grandfather.
Which is such a specific heritage claim.
It really is. But, we can't just limit this to Europe. The global ripple effect is what blew my mind in these sources. This talent spillover has drastically affected nations across the entire globe, right down to the fringes of Tier 2 rugby.
Yeah, the map just keeps expanding. Look at Japan.
Right. Kotaro Matsushima, he was born in Pretoria, came through the Sharks Academy.
And Peter Lappies Labuschagne, who actually captained Japan in the 2023 World Cup.
The South African captain in Japan. And then you have the USA Eagles grabbing guys like Hanko Gurmashus, who left South Africa as a schoolboy. But out of all of this, the Tier 2 drama is it's incredible. The geopolitical trivia here.
Oh, the Byron McGuigan situation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Explain this to me, because it is absolutely fascinating how one childhood on the Atlantic coast led to eligibilities for 3 entirely different test nations.
Well, it all comes down to border shifting. So McGuigan is born in Walvis Bay when it was officially South African territory.
Okay.
But he's raised in Cape Town, then he moves to the UK and plays for Scotland because of his heritage.
Right, so that's 2 nations down.
Yeah. But then, because Walvis Bay was later handed over to Namibia, when his Scotland career winds down, he uses that same 2022 eligibility rule to switch to Namibia.
That is just wild trivia. But, relying on this complex paperwork can also be a total disaster, like the Gavin Vandenberg case.
Oh, that was devastating for Spain.
Truly devastating. He was a South African prop who qualified for Spain, helped them actually qualify for the 2023 World Cup on the pitch.
But then the passport paperwork came out.
Right. There was a disqualification over his residency dates, and it cost Spain their spot in the World Cup. Romania got promoted instead. It just shows how high the stakes are when you're importing talent.
And it brings up broader implications for Tier 2 rugby in general. Because if you look at Namibia's Welwitschia squad, it is practically a South African provincial team in disguise.
Wow, really?
Yeah, a lot of their players come right through their South African system, and now you have Zimbabwe and Kenya actively tapping into that exact same factory to try and compete.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the total picture, it's just undeniable.
The numbers don't lie.
No, they don't. When you watch the next global rugby tournament, I really challenge you, don't just look at the flags on the scoreboard. Look at the biographies. Look at where these massive locks and rapid wingers actually learned to play the game. Because the South African university and franchise ecosystem truly is the hidden engine of global rugby.
It really is. And, it leaves you with a final thought to ponder. If so many top-tier and tier 2 nations are going to continue relying on this one-way pipeline from South Africa to fill their physical gaps,
Right.
what actually happens to the unique national playing styles of the past?
That's a great question.
Are we just moving toward a future where international rugby is nothing more than different geographical variations of the South African method?
Wow, that is definitely something to think about. A homogenization of the sport, all powered by one giant factory. Oh, well, that wraps up our look at the Springbok export. Just a quick reminder, please subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.